Rich, creamy, and using ingredients straight from your local neighborhood grocer. Or, as I like to call them, sheep. You have your fluffy sheep, your feather sheep, and your hairy sheep. Hey, how'd that get in there? She's hard at work, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, shepherds. Welcome back. And if you're new here, hello. This is where we talk all things sheepy. My name's Megan, and I'm wearing this stylish single glove because, injury, and also sanitary reasons. I'll take it off later, but while cooking, the glove will stay on. Okay, often quiches are made with a cold butter-based pie crust, but with the new year here, I was really craving a mooncake and that soft, flaky dough. So inspired by the mooncakes, we're gonna dive into that simple but flavorful quiche with an added twist of an oil dough. For our dough, we'll need 1 cup or 151 grams of all-purpose flour, half a teaspoon or 3 grams of salt, 1/4 of a cup or 50 grams of a lightly flavored oil. In my case, I'm using some melted sheep ghee, but it works well with veggie oil or even a mildly stronger flavored oil too, such as an olive oil. Just keep in mind your flavors will come through the dough, so keep that in mind. We'll also need half of a teaspoon or 3 grams of salt and anywhere between 1 to 2 tablespoons or 9 to 18 grams of cold water plus extra reserved on the side. Now that we have our base ingredients for our oil dough crust, let's go ahead and get started by turning on our oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 178 degrees Celsius. We're going to mix up our dough and blind bake it right away. Okay, so in a clean bowl, we're going to add our flour and our salt and stir it together. And then let's mix our ghee into our flour. One of the things I like about an oil-based dough is that it comes together really quickly and there's no need to chill or there's less worry overall. If you want to add herbs to give that crust an extra pop, now's a good time to add them in. I'm leaning into the lightly toasted ghee to add that nuttiness, adding another layer to our flavor pipeline, destination deliciousness. Notice how our flour looks a little crumbly? I'm mostly using a spoon to mash the oil and ghee into the flour and mix that in well. So now that our dough looks pretty well combined, let's go ahead and add our iced water. I'm starting off with 1 tablespoon and then mixing it in and adding in our other tablespoon. If you don't add enough water, you may find it to be a bit too crumbly to roll out, or later on after cooking, it'll be a little bit of a dry texture. I do like to do a squeeze test to check my water levels in my dough by simply grabbing a handful of the mix and then squeezing to form a bit of a ballish shape, and then using your thumb or forefinger to see how easily it crumbles apart. If it's too crumbly, I add about half a tablespoon or half a spoonful or less at a time. It really doesn't take too much water to have that really big impact. Okay, so for forms, I'm using a mini tart pan. This recipe works well for a larger pie pan as well, and muffin tins. And because this is an oil dough, I'm not going to be rolling out my dough on a floured canvas, and instead I'm rolling it out on parchment paper. Wax paper works really well too if you have that on hand. Also, if you want to press your dough directly into your pie pan to save on time, that works really well too. To prepare our pan, I like to brush the pans with some of the ghee, butter, or oil. I have ghee on hand today, so I'm using that. Also, a parchment paper lining helps to add the extra insurance layer to prevent sticking, especially with the muffin tins or if you're pressing your dough into the pan. Okay, so now let's go ahead and divide our dough into 2 balls and place 1 ball on our parchment paper. I find it easier to roll the dough out if I shape it into a rough puck. And then let's roll our dough between our parchment papers. And then removing the paper and placing it back down occasionally so we get this nice smooth dough. So let's go ahead and roll it out some more until it just about covers the pan. And I really like a thin crust on my quiches, but whatever thickness that you like is what works. So once your dough is at your desired thickness, we're going to gently plop our dough onto our prepared pan and prick our dough all over with a fork. If you want to freeze this as is to use later on, you can. But I'm going to go ahead and blind bake our pans for 4 to 5 minutes. This is to prevent a soggy crust. Okay, so I'm going to roll out the rest of our doughs and line our pan and muffin tin with the parchment paper. Since there's going to be some end bits, and I'm going to press the dough into the pan. This extra step really helps keep that crust from sticking to our pan. And for the tart, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it. I'm tracing our circle base directly onto our parchment paper and then brushing on the pan some extra sheepy ghee. We're going to line our pan and gently place our dough in. And if you see any cracks, just place a dough crumb on and press it in. all fixed. Next off, we're going to cut off our excess dough, and then we're going to save our scraps for our muffin tin. For our muffin pan, I'm going to cut a square out of our parchment paper and cut it in 4 slits, 1 slit on each side, and then rely on the weight of the crust to sink our liner into our muffin tin. And then we're going to follow through by pressing our dough into each muffin well. Rather than working the crust all the way up the sides of each well, I'm pressing a foot and then relying on that egg filling to make up the rest of the space later on. Okay, so let's go ahead and prick the base of the muffin tins as well, and then off to the oven to cook for 4 to 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and get started on our filling. For today, our ingredients are going to be 3 eggs, 2/3 of a cup or 138 grams of a flavorful liquid of your choice. So that's cream, milk, buttermilk, half a teaspoon or 3 grams of salt, a few sprigs of asparagus diced, a handful or so of cheese plus extra to taste, 1 onion sliced and sauteed, 1 teaspoon or 6 grams of garlic powder, half a teaspoon or 3 grams of onion powder, some bacon bits for garnishes, and I'm also using about half a teaspoon or a couple grams of brunost or brown cheese. I'm using just over half an onion because that's all I have on hand. If you like extra onions, add more. If you hate onion, sorrows. If you're allergic, tragedy. Okay, so on a hot pan, I'm going to brown the onions. And because the pan's well seasoned, I'm just using the moisture of the onions to keep it from sticking. And while the onions are cooking, I'm going to start dicing the asparagus and grating all of our cheeses. Also, our tarts and muffin crusts are ready to pull out of the oven, so I'm going to go ahead and set them aside to cool lightly while we finish up on the fillings. I'm using a combination of the sheep cheeses to really carry the bulk of the flavor. So I'm adding brunost from our last winter cheese make for extra body. I found brown cheese or brunost to act a lot like miso or black garlic or stock bases in most recipes. I really like firm grating cheeses like the ricotta salata for a fun parm-like kick, and a semi-hard cheddar. Probably this might be about 9-month-old cheese by now. By the end of the season, I kind of have a drawer in the fridge full of small cubes. So I don't really know which one's which after a while, and I kind of just eye it like, yes, the square, it definitely looks like a cheddar. And then I have this extra creamy, semi-hard cheese. It's mild, and I remember I put extra cream in it. I'm doing a coarse grind on that one. It's a bit crumbly, and I'll add some body. I'm expecting it to melt really well into the quiche, as well as add some balance to the flavors. Okay, so our onions are done cooking, so I'm going to go ahead and set them aside. And for our tart shells, I'm going to go ahead and line each shell with some cheese. This is to seal that crust, and as it cooks, it'll form this delicious, cheesy seal, preventing our eggy base from penetrating deep into our shell. In a bowl, we're going to add our eggs. These eggs came from the land and water chickens that free range around the sheep pasture. And as the seasons change, so do their yolks. In the spring, when there's this flush of grass, the yolks turn a deep orange. And when the forest is brimming with berries, it's not uncommon to have an almost crimson, orange, almost red yolk. But right now, the green stuff is super rare, so their yolks are a bit paler. Next, I'm adding a dash of brunost, a couple grams maybe. It's just the tip of a spoonful. And then I'm going to whip the brunost into the egg yolks pretty well to combine. I've also added a couple ice cubes of buttermilk and poured some hot water to melt those ice cubes down fast. And any type of your favorite liquid really works. I've used cream, I've used milk, I've used half and half, but whatever your favorite liquid really works. Next up, we're going to stir in our salt, pepper, and other spices, as well as our cheeses. My youngest requested to have some extra bacon on theirs for dinner, so I prepared some bacon bits in advance. And then we're going to mix this well to combine. I'm going to transfer some of it to a better container since I'm pouring our filling into a few shells, and I want to make sure I don't overfill. And then for topping, we're going to add some bacon bits and then off to bake for 20 minutes or until golden and puffed. Okay, so now that the quiches are ready, we're going to garnish some more with some baby asparagus bits and grated cheese, and then they're ready to eat. I'm going to dig into the baby tart first. It's buttery and nutty, and there's so many flavors coming through. After that first buttery and creamy hit, I'm finding it hard to find that the asparagus, which I actually don't mind. And when I cut this in half, maybe you can see the crust at the base. There's some onion and asparagus well distributed throughout, and I'm really not tasting a lot of asparagus, which I like. Asparagus gets a little old after a month of harvest, to me at least. So I think the cheeses really worked well with this. There's some saltiness that we get from the bacon. And with the cheeses, there's kind of just more this creaminess and body. There's some hints of egg. But overall, it's a very savory dish. It doesn't feel too heavy to eat, and it really hits the spot. So let me know if you end up deciding to make some, and leave me a green heart emoji if you've made it this far. And don't forget an extra special thank you. I appreciate you. And if you enjoy diving into the sheepy side of the dairy world, hit that subscribe button and the bell, where we explore sheep-focused lifestyle every week. And as for our hairy chicken, they did not stay the night in the coop, fortunately. They're a pretty regular visitor, so we're all pretty chill here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, ta-tas!